Words for Evil is a small, word-based indie game by Canadian developer and designer Dylan Loney. The game was released in August 2014 and is available on Steam, itch, Fireflower, and Indie Game Stand for around $3. I honestly don't remember where I got this game. I'm not sure if it was in a bundle, if I grabbed it on sale, or if I paid full price for it. It's not expensive, after all. What I do know is that despite how short and simple it is, I've put over 14 hours into it over the last few years. I've really enjoyed playing it, and I do recommend it to anyone who enjoys word and typing-based games. The retro-style visuals are simple but beautiful and nostalgic. The letter distribution, a key factor in this type of game, is quite good, and in the extremely rare event that I can't find any words, there is a shuffle button that can help at the cost of a couple of seconds of time. Unlike many word games, it's actually pretty fast-paced. I like the combat mechanics, and there's a nice variety in gameplay. But the game also suffers from some fairly less than stellar design choices, which might put some people off. Let's take a closer look at how the game works, and how the design can sometimes work against it. There are 6 stages in the game, each randomly generated as you go and full of various enemies, obstacles, and even a few shops. You take your party of up to 3 adventurers on a magical word-based mission to fight all the bad guys and get to the next level, I guess. The story isn't exactly super deep, but that's okay for a game like this. It's about the mechanics, not the lore. As you explore, you'll encounter many different enemies to fight. Your enemy is constantly attacking you, slowly whittling down your health, and you spell words using colored tiles to cast spells and attack them. The letters must be adjacent, so you have to find chains of letters in the grid to make each word. Unlike in most games of this type, the damage you do has nothing to do with which letters you use, but is based solely on which tiles are included. Each character has a color which tints some of the tiles, and using their tiles causes them to use their abilities. Spelling longer words also causes the tiles to explode and use the surrounding tiles in addition to the ones used to spell the word, so longer words are definitely helpful. Characters level up as they kill enemies, and when they reach a healing fountain, they can upgrade their skills with their newly earned levels and unlock new abilities. Adventurers keep their experience between adventures, so if you die and need to start over, you don't start back at level 1, and it is possible to eventually fully upgrade every class in the game. In the event a character's health reaches 0, you're given a last stand, an anagram with 7 letters which you can use to get some of your health back and keep fighting. If you manage a 6 or 7 letter word, you keep going. Otherwise, you just do some damage and the character dies. As far as I can tell, using multiple tiles of the same color causes the characters to use different abilities, although this is not explained very well and I might be mistaken. Transparency in the game is one of its biggest downfalls, and we'll get back to that in a minute. Other things you can encounter include traps, which have a grid of letters, all of which must be used to spell words in order to disarm the trap and avoid damage. The more letters you have left over, the more damage you take. There are also loot chests, which have 2 rows of letters. Somewhere in there is always a 5-letter word, and if you can find it, you can unlock the chest and get extra gold or equipment. You can also encounter other adventurers who wish to join your party. This is how you unlock new classes which you can later use to start new adventures. But you only unlock them if you let them join you, and if you already have 3 adventurers, you have to kick one out, which can be a tough decision, as new classes start at level 1. Killing monsters also gives the party gold, which they can spend at the few shops sprinkled here and there along the linear landscape. They can pay a healer to bring them back to full health, buy potions to heal themselves and give them temporary abilities, or buy items at the blacksmith to upgrade their skills. This is another place that suffers greatly from lack of transparency, and it might be the worst offender. Let's back up a bit. The interface of the game is simple. At the top of the screen, you get a graphical representation of your party and the current encounter. Below that, during a fight, you see the letter grid, and at other places you have an interface for buying, healing, upgrading, and so on. While you fight, or when you're in certain places such as the healer, you can see your party's health represented by a bar above their heads, but at other times there is no bar. In fact, most of the time there's no way to get any information about your characters at all. What abilities do they have? What's their attack power? How much XP do they need to level up? This is almost never visible. There's no menu where you can examine your characters. And when you encounter a new class that wishes to join you, it's really quite poorly explained. First, you get a look at the potential new character, what skills they will unlock with time. Then, if you say, yes, I want this character to join, that character goes away, and you're presented with the 3 you already have so you can choose which one to kick out. There's no way to compare them side by side. Forgot exactly how much damage the new class's base attack does? Too bad, there's no way to go back. Probably the worst case of information opacity comes when you visit the blacksmith. There are 3 types of items. One type increases attack, one type increases armor, and the third type gives some sort of special ability, like a % chance to slow an enemy on attack. But there's a big problem here. Where's the list of equipment my adventurers are already using? Am I replacing their old gear, or do the effects stack? And where on earth is the armor rating displayed? The answer to that, I'm sad to say, is that it's not. At least not anywhere I've been able to find, and believe me, I have tried. Nor can you see any effects that the equipment is giving a character after it's been assigned to them. Who did I give that freezing weapon to? If I don't remember, there's no way to find out. A visit to the discussions page for the game on Steam gave me at least a few answers, supplied by the developer when loads of people were asking the same questions. The weapon and armor effects do stack, so you're not replacing your old gear when you buy something new. That's a relief, at least. But no, there is no way to see what's equipped already, and apparently there's no display of the armor rating anywhere. At least with the attack rating, I can be sure I'm giving the weapons to the characters who need it most, but with armor, I just have to guess who needs more protection at the moment. This is a real shame. Really. The website for this game boasts a deep combat system with buffs, critical hits, armor, character attributes, attack modifiers, and more. But all of that is absolutely useless if you don't know what any of those things are. Imagine trying to play Civilization without knowing your combat unit stats, or Magic the Gathering without knowing the values in your own cards. It's impossible to use any kind of strategy whatsoever, and all the work the dev put into making the system so complex has pretty much gone to waste. All of this could have been averted if only the developer had added a simple character screen. A pause menu or a window you could open at any time, which would display all your character stats, including their armor, a list of any special abilities they've been granted by equipment, and how many points of weapons and armor they've been granted by equipment rather than levels, since those points will be lost if they die. The fact that such a window is not present in the game causes it to lose so much. It makes me really sad. As I've said, I do enjoy this game. A lot. It's a lot of fun. But when I think of how much better it could have been with just a few small changes, it just kills me. Exacerbating the problem is the speed of combat. Because you're being attacked constantly, you do not have time to plan which tiles you want to try to use. You just have to constantly be seeking and typing the next word as fast as you can. In fact, it moves so quickly that you never even have time to look up and enjoy the beautiful visuals that accompany your attacks, although anyone watching you play will at least be entertained. This issue actually could have been solved pretty easily. Simply pause the letter grid and the enemy attacks for half a second or so after submitting each word. This would give you just that little bit of breathing room to glance up and see the action, and to think a little more carefully about your next word instead of just typing out the first one you see. The game does have keyboard controls, as you would expect for this sort of game. They work pretty well during combat. Just start typing letters and the game will select them automatically. But outside of combat, the controls can be fairly obtuse. You can't just use the arrow keys to scroll through menus and select commands. You have to press the first letter of the word you're using, or you need to use the number keys to select things. I found using the mouse to be a lot easier, which is a bit of a shame since I prefer a game like this to be playable with the keyboard alone, but it's not a massive problem. Another minor problem is the variety of enemies to fight. Although they have different names and images, they don't feel any different during combat. It may be that they have different attributes and abilities, but since we can't see them, that doesn't affect the way you play the game. Over time, they all seem to blur together. In fact, it turns out that at the end of each level, the length of which seems to be fairly random since despite beating the first 4 fairly quickly, I've been stuck on the 5th for many hours at this point, there is a boss monster to fight before discovering the portal to the next area. I had never even noticed that it was a boss. There was no notification, no emphasis that this enemy was different, and combat was exactly the same as always. Finally, there's the question of the words involved with some of the puzzles, mainly the loot chests and the last stand situations when a character hits 0 health. Sometimes they are pretty normal English words, solvable by the average speaker of decent ability. However, I would say probably half the time, or more, the words are a little ridiculous. They're often extremely obscure names of plants, items, and groups of people from other languages, which feels pretty unfair. If the developer wanted to make sure the average player was unable to solve the anagrams most of the time, he did a good job. But I wish the words used were a little more common, especially considering that the main game is perfectly playable even to those English learners who are still not entirely comfortable in the language. It just seems a little out of balance with the rest of the experience. Although I understand it might not be easy to implement, a difficulty level with easier difficulties having shorter word lists with only more common words might have gone a long way to making the game more accessible to everyone. So yeah, the game definitely has some problems, and since its last update seems to have been in November of 2015, it seems pretty unlikely that it will be getting any more attention from the developer. So if these problems really put you off, they're probably not going to be fixed. However, if you can live with its issues, I do want to reiterate that it is still, for the most part, really fun to play. For me, the enjoyment comes from my love of word games, the focus I feel when I'm hunting for longer words to spell in the grid, the satisfaction when I find a big one and half the board explodes, and the feeling of progress, abstract though it may be, as my adventurers gain levels and are able to survive through the more difficult areas of the game. If that sounds appealing to you, give this one a try. And if you're a game developer yourself, keep these design lessons in mind and don't make the same mistakes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.